podcasting from sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to Tips for Tour Operators, your podcast for growth hacks, marketing tips, and actionable insights from leading experts in the tourism industry. Welcome everyone to Tips for Tour Operators podcast. I am Dustin Hoyman with Outdoor Adventure Marketing. Today we have Alex Bainbridge, one of the hugest influencers in the tours and activities space. He's the founder of TourCMS. He is an innovator and someone who can just see the future of what's happening in tours and activities. He is one of these people that really uses technology in the tour market and was one of the first companies to be a SaaS system. And now he's even seeing the future again in self-driving cars and how they are impacting tours and activities. Alex, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Well, great, Dustin. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to come and talk to all of your listeners about how innovation happens in tours and activities and really all the exciting things that are going to be changing in the next few years.
It is very, very exciting. And you and I were talking a little bit ago about everything that's been happening and about how you're an innovator. And we talked a little bit about your project. And I was just blown away. I think this is going to be an incredible podcast because I think the future is coming sooner than people think. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell our audience about you.
Yeah, well, I started off a long time ago with a degree in computer science. So I am officially a techie. But then I went traveling. I drove London to Kathmandu, which took four and a bit months. That was great fun. And then at some stage, slightly randomly, I became a qualified professional yacht skipper, as you do. And to cut a long story short, I ended up thinking I had two passions. One is technology, one is travel. And so I thought, well, what should I do? I should become a travel technologist. So that's how I kind of ended up in the middle of the two, kind of understanding travelers and traveling and also understanding what technology can do. So that's how I sort of started. And at one point, I owned a 4-bus overland expedition company. So we're driving trucks around the Middle East and Asia. And that's really how I started TourCMS, because I realized that we needed to have a computer system to manage all of this bookability. So that's when I started TourCMS. I thought, oh, well, hang on a minute, we can create a system to take bookings online. And in the early days of the web, just taking bookings online was an exciting thing to be doing. Mm-hmm. So that was, that's how I really got into it. It was purely by luck or chance or whatever. Yeah. How these things go. It wasn't really by conscious decision. It was just how it happened.
So you owned a tour and you were looking as a way to, book online. How did you even think to get to that spot when no one else was doing it?
Well, the funny thing at that time is that the majority of tour companies had brochures. So it was, you literally posted brochures out to people, and that was how things happened. So I thought, hey, we can create a website that doesn't have brochures, just for cost reasons, thinking, well, we'll just have a web. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was great for customers who didn't, if you designed a really amazingly great looking website, you would get customers. You didn't need to do much more than that, because that's how people are influenced by the design quality of your website. So if you have a well-designed website, they think, oh, you must be a solid company because you wouldn't have a good website otherwise. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of credibility built just by having a bit of technology knowledge and really, using that to the maximum and getting out there and being early. Really, I mean, being early is always helpful. But yeah. So that was how I ended up in tour operators. But then I ended up in day tours, which is a slightly different to sort of multi-day adventure. I ended up in day tours really because in 2012, I started looking at, well, what is the big e-commerce activity that's happening in tours and activities? And it was all day tours, because day tours is an e-commerce transaction. You as the customer don't have to talk to the supplier, the tour company, in order to make that transaction. You just book, you just select and pay. Whereas multi-day was then and is still now fairly dominated by ensuring that the conversations are good. So you know that the customer is going to talk to the supplier before making a booking. How, therefore, do you make that conversation informed, streamlined, and not wasting either end's time? That's what multi-day tour operating is all about. But day tours is much more e-commerce, and I quite like e-commerce because I like people to be able to commit to buying and then just get on with something else.
Yeah, that's really great. So how, you said you got your degree in computer science, but how are you able to see, the trends of technology and how they're happening ahead of time?
I think technologists have to be several years ahead anyway, just by default. Okay. And so, because it takes us 12 months, 18 months, 24 months to build anything. So therefore, we're always 2 years ahead. Because and so when people always ask me, well, what's your prediction for next year? And I'm like, well, that's a silly question because I already know what's coming next year because we've already built that last year. So I'm not very good at getting into these prediction conversations with people. But so technologists have to build a couple of years ahead. And not only that, but entrepreneur technologists have to think even further ahead because we have to think, okay, we're going to build a couple of years ahead, but we need the business to be peaking in 5 to 10 years' time. Because if we go too early on something, then we will never get a business exit. And if we come too late on something, it's already too late. So entrepreneur innovators have to think even further forward than regular innovators who are working within existing companies. So that's just it. So once you start living on the edge, it's fine because you're just kind of living in the future anyway. So therefore, you know the right people to talk to, you know the right conversations to have, you understand what's going to happen next. So it becomes quite straightforward. What's not straightforward is then suddenly realizing, when you finish your work, you go, actually, hang on, it's only 2018. Oh, that's nice.
Okay. It's not 2020 yet. I need to calm down just a little bit. So, that brings us to our topic today. How did you see, so you're seeing into the future, there's been a lot of news about self-driving cars lately. How have you looked into that and basically become interested in autonomous vehicles?
Well, I didn't really mean to. I sold TourCMS at the end of 2015. And I was quite happy setting up a new startup, which is all about food experience discovery. So it was all about places to eat that weren't restaurants. So food markets and, dinners with locals, etc. And that was a really interesting problem to solve from a consumer perspective because no one has solved that at scale yet. And I was really happy doing that. And I thought this would be a nice small little startup to do after selling my sort of last big business. And then I saw the autonomous vehicle opportunity and I thought, hang on a minute, this is going to change the game. Because if you think about it, every 4 or 5 years, something comes along that completely changes the business again. Yeah. So we had the web, we've had mobile, we've had social, and now we've got autonomous vehicles. So of course there have been many other mini innovations between those big points. But those have been the major points of innovation that have happened in the last 20 years, web, mobile, and social. And all of those innovations have come from outside of the travel industry. And all of those innovations have brought with them big new companies that were not there before, but were there as a result of that big innovation. So you're kind of always looking out for what are those big things that are going to come, that are going to be next. So something like augmented reality, we can have a long conversation about that. Is it going to be big? It'll be interesting. It's a new kind of content, but is it really going to be one of those categories, one of those top category changes? Probably not. Then there's blockchain. Blockchain in tours and activities, well, that's really solving the distribution problem. I kind of feel like we've kind of solved the distribution problem to an extent now. So why do we need to go fix it with blockchain? Probably no use. So I wasn't very excited about that. Autonomous vehicles is it. That's obviously the next thing that's going to be the big foundational change within the tours and activities and attraction sector.
So give us a quick little overview of what's going on with self-driving cars and, the general timelines that you are thinking about this happening and how it's going to be impacting tours.
Yeah, timelines is the really big problem with this, in that we don't really know when it's going to come, because we're waiting for innovators outside the travel industry to get some technology working that we can then use. So the way that it currently looks is, I'll give you some examples. General Motors is going live with their new ride-hailing service 2019. Google, Waymo, says that they will be doing 1 million passengers per day in their new autonomous taxi service by 2020.
Wow.
And Ford is launching their ride-hailing service in 2021. So, and the reason why General Motors and Ford are coming into ride-hailing is because they see that with autonomous vehicles by 2025, 2030, people, that's consumers, are not going to be owning personal cars. Therefore, if people don't need personal cars, then why do you need dealers? In fact, why do you need car companies? So Ford and General Motors, in fact, every car manufacturer is pivoting to services. So to answer your question, when's it all going to happen? Well, it's all pretty much kicking off now. And it's going to be, 2019, 2021 is when there's a lot of new ride-hailing companies coming in. So if you are a vehicle-based sightseeing company, or if you use vehicles in some way, for example, you use them to transport people to your attraction, or you do a hotel pickup before a tour, then the significant changes that we're looking to see will all be happening in the next 2 to 4 years. So the timelines are pretty tight. So especially as it takes, a good 2 years to, if you start now and you've not even started transitioning to this new concept, it will take you 2 years of thinking to work out what on earth it means. And the reason why the transition is going to be so hard this time is, if you think about the web or mobile or social, it didn't really change the product. So you as a local tour company had a tour, maybe it was a beer tasting, or, a nice sightseeing bicycle ride. That was the product. And it did not change as a result of the web, mobile, or social. Yes, you may have digitized your descriptions. Yes, you may have started taking last-minute bookings, which is what mobile forced on everyone. And you may have adopted a reservation system, and you may have put your product onto an online travel agency like Viator, or Expedia, or Get Your Guide as a result of, through your reservation system rather than by email. But it didn't change the bicycle tour. It didn't change your beer tour. It didn't change any of your other sites. It didn't change the product itself. So it just changed the way you marketed and retailed your product. With autonomous vehicles, as a result of losing the driver in vehicles, the cost base is completely different. We've got smaller vehicles, which you can put a single family into, no longer these big 30-seater buses. And the product is completely different. So at the same time as thinking about, wow, we've got this whole big technology shift about to change, but the product, your tour, has to change as well. So your tour's changing, technology is changing, and then you've got a few small competitors like Ford, General Motors, Google, Uber, Airbnb, and everyone else all coming in at the same time. So it's going to be a bit of a mess, probably in about 24 to 36 months' time. You can have me back on the podcast. You can have me back on your show in 2 years' time, and I'll be like, what was I saying?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because this episode comes out in the middle of October 2018. You're talking about timelines of 2019. I mean, that's the year 2019 is only a few months away, and we're going to start seeing that. I know, we are based in Phoenix, Arizona, and so we've got a huge presence of Waymo cars. Uber did a lot of tests here on their self-driving cars. I see GM cars everywhere. This is like not the Jetsons' future. This is, in a very short time frame that we're thinking about.
Yeah, this is the problem, and the reason why that is a problem is because people who are buying existing buses or minibuses or shuttle buses for their existing business are probably looking for between 5 to 15 years of commercial use, and then to get a resale value. So if you go and buy a double-decker bus that's about $300,000. You go and buy a luxury tour bus, that would be about $500,000. And you expect to get good usage out of that. And then when you've had your usage, you expect to get a resale value from it. Mm-hmm. So if autonomous vehicles completely change the experience, well, that could be a problem, because anyone who's currently committing money to buying existing vehicles will go, well, actually, I'm A, not going to get my usage that I need, and B, I'm not going to get the resale value. Of course, they're still going to be legal. Of course they are. So there's no issue about legality. There's no issue. You can still use the vehicles. The issue is the customer experience, because in travel, it's all about the experience. We're not talking about people commuting to work. We're talking about what is the best way of seeing this city that I've never seen before. Well, and so therefore, the customer's got a choice. They can go on a bicycle, they can go on a scooter, they can go on an autonomous vehicle, or they can go on this big old tour bus. Well, that's probably not going to be the choice. The choice is going to be one of the others, because the other options are going to be cheaper, they're going to be more convenient, they're going to go at the time that you want them to go. That's it. They're going to be just there. So it's about the experience, not about whether or not a bus that you've currently purchased is legal or not. Of course, they're going to be legal. Just whether or not they're going to be the product that people want to buy.
So in the tours and activities space, where do you think the impact is going to land first? Is it going to be on the big bus tour side? You had mentioned something about hotel pickup. Where do you think is going to be, how is it going to start encroaching into the tours and activities space?
Yeah, this is sort of the difficulty. It's quite difficult to, even though we are talking quite a short time ahead forwards, it is still quite difficult to make these kind of really absolute predictions. It's going to be fairly evolutionary. So if you think about vehicle tours at the moment, there are two primary types of vehicle tour. There are those where you take a tour using the vehicle. So you kind of drive around for a couple of hours and you look out the window and you get given an audio tour, that kind of tour. Mm-hmm. And then you get the second kind, which is really a sequence of places to go. So a sequence of attractions. So you go here for 10 minutes, you get out, go here for 10 minutes, you get out, the sequence. So you get those two different types, and both of those will be impacted. Because that's where it will impact the most first, is where you're using a vehicle either to deliver the tour via the vehicle or using it to hook up sequences of places to visit. Those are the two that will be primarily impacted. The ones that will be least impacted are where you take very long trips out, like a 5-hour drive to go and see a vineyard or something, because the distances involved there are going to be too long for the capacity of electric batteries that are going to be on these vehicles. So you just won't find those being, because I think you'll struggle to get the cost down to so the big buses are going to be absolutely fine on these kind of 10 hours go to see a winery kind of tours, but they're not necessarily going to be fine for the urban. It's the urban tours that are going to be impacted most first.
Okay. Now you said something in there about the audio types of tours. If the drivers are going away, what's happening to those guides that actually do host the tour? They're the one actually giving you the information on the tour itself.
Yeah, so the hosts, they're going to be okay, I think.
Okay.
But I think that they're not going to be stationed within a vehicle anymore. I think they're going to become place hosts. So they will go and stand at an attraction or a place of interest, wait for the autonomous vehicle to turn up. They'll give their 10-minute presentation of the area, or go and guide them around a museum, or go and guide them around whatever it is. And then the people will get back in their autonomous vehicle, and the place host will stay at that place waiting for the next person to turn up in their vehicle. So I do think humans are really important, because humans need to deal with humans. I think this is an important thing. The problem with technology is everyone says, you technologists are trying to get rid of humans. I go, no, we're not trying to get rid of humans. What we're trying to do is build great customer experiences. And if that is better delivered digitally than with humans, then that's what we deliver. But the humans are massively important because when you come to visit a destination, you want to meet the locals. So, we need to keep them involved. And being a place host, i.e. you stand at a certain place and then, talk to people as they drive up to you, that is, that's going to be useful.
Okay.
I think. So I think the place hosts, I think that's kind of okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the guides themselves are probably going to be just fine, but it's still going to basically change the fundamentals of the tour. So it sounds like almost if, let's say you are, an urban, let's say an urban architecture tour,
yeah,
you might have different people at individual places versus be within the
an architecture tour is a really interesting thing because the other way of looking at it is that the majority of the autonomous cars will have screens and maybe will have augmented reality within the vehicles at some point, but initially they'll have screens. So the host of your tour could actually be someone who really understands about architecture. But it will be a digitally delivered host, i.e., a talking head on a screen in the car. So, and especially if it's something like architecture, then that becomes really important because you're going, right, I've got this amazing world's expert on this architectural style who's delivering me this tour. How we've always wanted to do person-to-person tours in tours and activities. I mean, there's been tens and tens of marketplaces for tour guides. And I'm not talking about the professional tour guides who, work 5 days a week or more. I'm talking about the amateur tour guides who go, I've got this really great idea for a tour and I'm going to go and put it on a marketplace. And then they commit to having to be available to operate that tour for the next 10 Saturdays. Well, that's the reason why that's not really taken off is because that poor person who's the amateur has to block out their diary for the next 2 months and they go like, I don't want to do that. But now that amateur can design a tour and deliver that in an autonomous vehicle. So all of a sudden, all of those person-to-person experiences that we've previously been designing and loads of startup founders have been launching, but have just not been at all getting any traction, all of a sudden that concept becomes deliverable now.
Wow, yeah, that's really getting into even some sort of maybe personalization of these tours as well. Do you think that'll be an impact as well?
Yeah, personalization is a little bit tricky in autonomous vehicles, at least initially, mainly because the technology with autonomous vehicles, they're quite good at going fixed routes.
Okay.
So they're quite good at going, I'm going to go here to here to here, because as a technology company, we can make sure that those routes are drivable. We can make sure that they've got all the necessary bits in place to make them work. If you start doing completely ad hoc tours, how do you know that it's a good tour? How do you know that it makes sense? All these kind of problems. So we will get to personalized tours completely, but we're not going to get there initially. So I think what we'll start with is configurable tours, not necessarily personalized tours. So you'll say, hey, I want to spend more time in the park because I want to have a picnic there, rather than this person who goes, actually, you know what, I've seen the park already, so we'll drive past it, but I'm not getting out.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we can start tweaking things, but we don't necessarily need to. It's not changing it radically. It's kind of configuration around the edges.
Yeah, that's really great. So tell me about the company that you are working on right now, and what is your big project that you're working on right now?
Yes, so we're trying to create we are creating, actually, there's no trying about it, we are creating basically a database of autonomous vehicle sightseeing routes. So we're employing content creators and route designers to go and say, hey, let's go and build some routes in all these different places. And then we're making those routes available to companies who are operating autonomous vehicle services. So that you might be able to jump into your autonomous taxi and select an Autoura route and go, hey, I'm going to go on that route. But we're also researching our own vehicles. We're not building autonomous vehicle technology ourselves, but we're researching vehicles for licensing at some point. So we will have Autoura branded sightseeing vehicles on the street operating our routes. And the question is, when will that be? Well, that is a great question. We don't know. It is entirely possible to do kind of in the next 18 months. So, it could happen sooner rather than later. It's just one of those big unknowns. So we're kind of playing both directions. We're kind of saying, hey, we'll have our own vehicles and you can have a vehicle, but we're also saying, no, okay, if Google becomes the dominant player within autonomous vehicles, if they go and use their own routes, then if you are an existing sightseeing company, you don't have a business. So somehow or another, you need us to get into these providers, because if we don't, then all the existing vehicle sightseeing companies are going to be in trouble.
So there's a real threat in some of these players getting into this market, especially if they do have the technology to create the routes themselves. Like Google, everyone is familiar with Google Maps, so I'm assuming that is a potential worry.
Yeah, well, it's not a worry, because I think there will still be independent app stores. So we can give our data to independent app developers. So you might be in a Google vehicle, but you wouldn't necessarily use the Google navigation system. You could just get into Google as a taxi, and we would be, our route data could be in someone's app that's on their phone that is not under control of Google. So I think there's lots of ways that we can work around it. I mean, there's sort of ideal outcomes and there's less than ideal outcomes, but we have methods for all of the different potential ways of looking at it. And that's one of the reasons why I think existing sightseeing companies who operate vehicles really probably should come and talk to us. Quick plug, because we can kind of hedge all the different ways that the industry is going. And that's what that's half of the challenge of what we've been coming up with, is been working out, well, what happens if the industry goes in this direction? What happens if the industry goes in that direction? Well, okay, we've covered that, we've covered this, covered that. And if you're an individual company, a lot of this is very complicated technology. If you're an individual company, this is well beyond your resources. So I think it's sort of going to just like you as a sightseeing company would now go to a reservation platform, you would now go to a software. You go to a software as a service autonomous vehicle sightseeing platform.
Okay.
So I think it's and for exactly the same reasons. Yes, you can go and build your own reservation system, but there's much better economies from going and licensing a system from someone else. Same with autonomous vehicles.
So what is the first step for someone that runs one of these vehicle-based tours? What's the first step that they should take?
Well, the first step, and I'm going to try not to sound too negative, but the first step is to look at your financial agreements for your leasing and your loans for your existing vehicles. And if you can't survive the potential financial shock of having these vehicles not sell at the price you expect to sell or not get the full usage, then that's pretty much your only priority right now, is to think, how on earth am I going to survive if we now need to go and replace 10 buses with 40 autonomous cars? Now, if you can't afford to do that, that is your priority.
So really look into your...
That should be the first thing to do, is go and talk to your accountant, because probably, if you can afford that, it's fantastic. And then there's a second step to do. But if that's the first step, is to go, hang on a minute, I've got these, I've taken out all these loans on vehicles that may not have a resale value and may not get the full usage that I'm expecting. Can you survive that financial shock? If you can't, well, that's the problem.
So let's say somebody is in good financial standing. They have been very smart with their finances so far. They're good at maintenance, so they're not looking to buy a vehicle now, so they can ride out maybe the next 10 years or so with what they have. How do they start to plan for this transition into autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, well, one of the problems is the timing. So we talked a little bit about the time just now. So this timing could be anywhere between 2 years' time and 8 years' time. One thing's for sure is that by 10 years' time, you will be running autonomous vehicles. You're not going to be running regular vehicles. But there is a fundamentally challenging problem, which is we don't really know if it's going to be 2 years or 8 years or 3 years. Whereabouts on this whole sort of spectrum is it going to be? So so that's the reason why we've come up with a two-phase sort of transition plan, which people can adopt, which is our first phase is to look at routes and go, okay, let's go and get those routes built out so that we know what the vehicles are going to drive. And then the second phase is to look at the vehicles. So that way you don't have to commit to vehicles today in 2018, thinking, oh, I've got to go and buy all those vehicles, because that would be ridiculous, because we've got no idea when this whole thing's going to change. But what we do know is that Ford and General Motors are changing services early, ahead of the change from personal owned cars to shared autonomous vehicles. So if they've changed early, you as a local sightseeing company have to change at the same time. Otherwise, they're going to come in and take your market. So even though we don't know the times exactly for when autonomous vehicles are coming, we do know the timings for Ford and General Motors. So we are going to have to just react to the market shift. So two-phase plan. First phase is to build some autonomous vehicle routes, which is what we've been set up to do. And then the second phase is, you will be able to license vehicles from independent manufacturers of autonomous vehicles, and then you'll be able to incorporate the routes that you built in Autoura into those vehicles, and then operate a new sightseeing service using autonomous vehicles.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that that's pretty much it. But we can also work with companies who don't want to necessarily have vehicles at any point. So, for example, if you're a regional tourist board or DMO, you might want to generate routes today, but with no ultimate intention of ever owning vehicles, and that's absolutely fine as well.
So one of the big things we talked about with Autoura is the routes themselves and the potential power of claiming a certain route would be. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the challenges is fathoming out how do you handle kind of exclusivity. So a lot of the existing sightseeing companies who are running central franchise brands are running regional franchises. So you become, and I won't use any of their names, you become the franchise for a certain city. And that's absolutely fine, and that's a good model for them. But I think there's an opportunity here to do franchises by route. So once you've got a route created, then you basically take responsibility for that route, and no one else can then create a route that is similar or duplicated, or so therefore we end up, it forces everyone to start creating new interesting routes, which is good because that's what we want. But it also means that we create incentive for people to join our platform early to go and create their routes, because the people who get in there early can pretty much create the best routes in their city, what they think will be the best routes. And anyone else who sets up in sightseeing business and uses the Autoura platform later won't be able to come along and go, oh, I think I'll copy that, because they just won't be able to. So that's our concept is to have lots of diverse routes, and that's our method to do that is by having route exclusivity. So that's
okay.
That's right. So it's kind of complicated, but makes sense. I mean, because what we're trying to do is create a model a little bit like how Uber currently works with drivers, in that people own their own cars and then go and work on the Uber platform. We're effectively trying to create that model, which is where people can, where local sightseeing companies will maybe own 10 or 20 autonomous vehicles, and they can put them into our platform and receive bookings. Or if they've got any other way of making bookings independently, that's something that they can talk about. But that's kind of the Uber model. So it's the same kind of model.
So there's really interesting partnership too between, if somebody does create a route, and on that route there are certain attractions, maybe like the local zoo or museums. Looks like there might be an interesting partnership between those routes and those attractions as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's quite difficult to know exactly what the final price for an autonomous vehicle might be on a per mile basis, and that has a big impact to the way that we work with attractions. So the current estimate is that it's $2.50 per mile for an Uber vehicle. So an Uber with a human driver.
Okay.
And everyone knows that Uber is losing money. So that expectation is that that is below market price. It's certainly below what you'd pay a human taxi, which is about $3.50 a mile at the moment. So autonomous taxis are expected to cost about 40 cents a mile.
Wow, that's a big drop.
So about a fifth of the price, which suddenly completely changes the sort of the mechanics of how you can work with attractions. So to give you an example, take a ticket to the zoo. Maybe that's $50, and maybe there's 3 people in the car, so that's $150 ticket purchase, and on 15% commission. 15% is quite low, by the way. Attractions can go much higher than that, but let's just do the calculation on 15. On 15% commission, there is $22.50 to be made on that $150 purchase. Now, if we know that the autonomous vehicle costs 40 cents a mile, we can give a free pickup to anyone within 10 miles of that zoo to go to the zoo. And the maximum that's going to cost us for a return trip is $10. So that still means that we can retain $12.50 commission and giving everyone a free trip. Now that just does not work with that model does not work with existing taxi or Uber prices. Just can't. Mm-hmm. The even existing Uber prices are much higher than the commission that you can make from attraction tickets. So that model wouldn't work. But all of a sudden, you've now got the opportunity of going, okay, we basically can. We can completely change the way that attractions are booked. We can completely change the models, because there's more money to be made from the commission on selling on the attraction than there is on the per mile rate that the customer is going to be paying the autonomous taxi. That's kind of an interesting question. I mean, that kind of assumes, and that this is a risk. So I'm going to add the caveat now. That does caveat that the caveat is that. That's if the per mile price goes down to 40 cents a mile. If we don't get it down to that price, then of course that option doesn't materialize, which is fine. But so attractions are kind of interesting. I think you imagine wanting to go to the zoo and summoning an autonomous vehicle that's branded as the zoo, and you get and because these that's just how it's going to be. So if you're an existing company that is focused on vending or retailing attractions, then that changes the game.
So it really sounds like, bigger than just autonomous vehicles impacting vehicle-based tours, it sounds like it's going to impact basically everything in destination, or has the potential to impact everything in destination overall.
Yeah, just another example. Take a classic hotel concierge referral. You go to, you're a guest at a hotel. You go down to see the concierge. Let's just assume for the moment that the concierge is a human, but let's just go with that for the second. So you go down and see the concierge, and you ask the concierge, "Hey, I need to get some new clothes, and I'm going out to the restaurant." And the concierge says, "Oh, you should go shopping here, and then you can go to this restaurant." Well, at the moment, the way that they transfer that information to you is by putting a little cross on a paper map, and then you get the paper map, and then you hope that you get there. But here, the concierge can summon an autonomous vehicle, program these couple of stops in that you program the shop and program the restaurant, and all of a sudden you go off and go to that shop and go to that restaurant, and the way that becomes interesting is that you can create some quite interesting premium experiences here. So you don't have to. So you can see how this might be paid for by the shop, or paid for by the restaurant, or branded as the hotel. So autonomous vehicles, because of the cost per mile is so low. I'll bring back my caveat from just now. We don't quite know that it will be that low yet, but if we can get the cost per mile down to where we expect the cost to get down to, then it massively changes. As I said, tours, traction booking, and now, you know, hotel concierge, and how hotel concierges can interact with places in the city.
Wow, that's so basically the robots are coming, they're taking over. And they're going
Well, I wouldn't want to be an online marketing agency right now, because there won't be any online marketing to do. It'll all be automated orders. You know, it's all going to be very different.
Hey now, I'm an online marketing agency. No, but it is interesting because, you know, this is something that is coming very quickly. It's one of these things that I don't. Like I said, you know, being in Phoenix, Arizona, we are a big test bed for these self-driving cars, and I don't know if people, you know, worldwide really understand how quickly this adoption is coming and how quickly they're actually going to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I have slight sort of hesitations about sounding so positive about it and about how quick it's going to be, because it's quite easy for people like me who are technologists to get very excited about this and go, oh, this is going to be changing everything, and oh my goodness, we should all, you know, the sky is falling in and everyone should be changing right now. You know, but you know, because people have seen this before, you know, and it's like, oh, yeah, do we have to listen to this technology, you know, stuff again? And like, oh, you know, and you're like, oh, but as I go back to sort of one of my earlier points, is that with the web and mobile and social, if you didn't react, you were kind of okay, because your product wasn't expected to change. And so, yeah, if you hadn't kind of got your mobile optimized website ready quite yet, oh well, too bad. Yeah, it's okay. Well, it's not, you know, it's not like the end of the world. It's because you know, customers will still find you if they really want you, and they'll still book you. But we're now talking about your product changing, your product being, you know, turning into a VHS tape, and that is something you don't want to be, because you want to be selling amazing local experiences. Think about tech for a second. That's what we're all into, is selling amazing local experiences, so that when someone comes to a destination, they walk away from that destination and go, wow, I had a great time in that place. I want to go back, or I want to tell my friends about it. That's all we want. So if technology creates better experiences than can currently be delivered, then that's what the customer's going to book, because that's what they're going to want. So it's not, so the product, because the product is changing, the product, i.e. your tour, your experience, whatever it is, that's changing. That's why this is such an important thing to get right. You know, and it would be okay if the product was changing and it was just, you know, sightseeing companies versus sightseeing companies, because that everyone would kind of understand. But now we're talking about sightseeing companies versus Ford versus versus Google versus General Motors versus everyone. You're like, well, hang on a minute. Where did all these companies come in, and why do they all want to be in sightseeing? You know. Yeah. And you know, so it's not, you not only have you got to get really with it on the technology, but you've also got to get yourself into a position where you compete fairly against these really very large companies who are not coming in here for fun. They're coming here to win. Yeah,
that's incredibly powerful.
Are we all worried yet?
I mean, I'm excited. I think it's incredible. I think it's I mean, even if you said the timelines of 2 to 8 years, I'm thinking even if this happens in 10 or 15 years, that's well within, you know, everyone's normal lifetime of things that, you know, they remember. You know, 10 years ago doesn't seem like it was that long ago, and so I think it's coming up very quick. So I know I'm personally excited.
The iPhone was only 2007, so we're only 11 years after the iPhone.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, I mean, the change, I mean, the reason why this is so problematic for sightseeing companies is because if you look at existing sightseeing, it's all fixed routes. And fixed routes are the easiest things for autonomous vehicles to do. So forget about this kind of robot taxi kind of concept, because robot taxis, you have to map every single road in that destination, and you have to know everything about that destination in order to be safe to drive that robot taxi. But with autonomous vehicle sightseeing, you just go, okay, here's a really neat little 5-stop tour that you can go on, and it can be totally mapped and everyone's really happy. So the chances are that autonomous vehicle sightseeing will be ahead of robot taxis. So every time you hear someone talk about, oh, this is a long way off, you go, yeah, but you're talking about driving in the snow, delivering robot taxis. And we're talking about fixed routes, probably in the sunshine. So it's not, if you're a ski resort, you can probably sit there and relax a little bit more. But if you're not a ski resort, if you're a sunshine place, you'll be like, oh, hang on a minute, this is going to be here very soon.
Yeah, that's very true. So the name of your company is Autoura. Tell me a little bit about the name, because you shared a cool little story about it.
Yeah, Autoura is auto and tour, but with the TO in the middle removed, so it becomes Autoura. And autour in French, for anyone who speaks French, means around here. So Autoura is around here, and auto tour. So that's kind of how that works. I know it's probably a little bit geeky, but that was
I mean, I think you told me I liked it.
Well, I mean, I've got a few other names that could have been good, but I think this is the one we're going to go with. I think it's a good name. It's a good name. I'm kind of happy with it. I mean, ideally, I think that in 10 years' time, the brands that will be on the street will be airline brands, online travel agent brands, hotel brands. So whether or not there's space for a new autonomous vehicle sightseeing brand is an entirely interesting question. But I'm a technologist, so I'm very relaxed about being a platform, and I'm behind the hotel brands, or the platform behind the online travel agent brands. I think we got an opportunity to be our own brand and to make that work, but ultimately we're a platform, and that's where we can be so we can, as I said, the problem with this whole topic of autonomous vehicle sightseeing, indeed autonomous vehicles at all, is knowing exactly which way the direction is going to go in the next few years. So we've kind of got that covered. We can either become a sightseeing brand, or we can say we're actually a platform and somebody else's brand might be the brand. And I think that's where, that's kind of how I want to play it. Yeah,
well, I think that's pretty great. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, they want to learn a little bit more about Autoura, or just, they've got some concerns, maybe they want to, talk to you about maybe building out a route, what's the best way for someone to find you?
Yeah, so we've published a 20-page detailed transition plan. So if you are an existing sightseeing company with vehicles, or indeed if you don't have vehicles and you're thinking, oh, actually, I want to be the sightseeing company of my destination, I can take this opportunity to come into this sector now. Even if you don't have vehicles, it doesn't matter. You can have vehicles or no vehicles today. Then we have this 20-page transition plan that you can just download, and that's available from www.autoura.com/transition. That's it. Simple as that. If you download that document, that gives you a lot more background to what we are doing, what the sector is doing, what some of the things that you can do practically to start preparing for this. As I said, the key thing really is not buying vehicles today, because there's no vehicles to buy. So it's just not practical. So the transition plan is all about routes and working out what experiences you can deliver in your destination, and then being ready for if we suddenly find that someone comes in and puts 50 vehicles onto your street in your area, and Ford or General Motors or whoever, we can go, right, okay, you need to be live now with autonomous vehicle sightseeing, otherwise you're going to be out of business shortly. So we need to be ready to react at any time, but not necessarily asking for your money now, because if we ask for your money now, you'll be like, why am I spending all this money on something that we don't really know what's going on? So we're trying to focus on routes as an immediate deliverable that we can all do collectively. And when I say all do collectively, we all have to do this, because if we don't do this, then the existing sightseeing companies are going to get squashed by these new vehicle companies, because they'll just come in and do it. And that might be a kind of okay for an attraction, because you don't really mind who gives you the booking. But if you're a sightseeing company, you need to keep your business alive. That's what you need to.
So that's autoura.com/transition. I'll go ahead and link that in the show note, so everyone can get there from there. Are there any final thoughts? I mean, this is a pretty crazy heavy topic, and I think it's really cool, but any parting thoughts before we get going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to kind of move now. So it is kind of a 2018 thing. I mean, whenever I talk to people about this, they go, "Oh, this is good, but I've got all these other things going on. I've got all these OTAs needed to do this. And I've got stuff. I've got all my daily work to do." It's like, is this really a priority? That's what people say to me. Come on, they go, "Yeah, this all sounds like it's going to be great, but okay, we can do that in 12 months' time."
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't get these routes into the ride-hailing companies now, then they will go off and do their own solutions, and you will not have a business in 3 years' time. So even it might not be your priority, it's our priority. We have to do that. And if the existing sightseeing companies don't come with us or Autoura, then we'll have to do it. And I don't want to do it because I really want existing sightseeing companies to get involved, because it's their businesses that we're protecting here. So that's, it is. And I'm not asking for any particular time commitment. I'm saying, because I know that people are busy. I know that people have got lots of things to do in their business and difficulty to do. So that's one of the reasons why the way that our transition plan works, if you download it and take a look, is that you can pay a content person to go and create routes in your destination. We will use you as a local expert to make sure that they kind of match what you need to, what are the great things that can take place in your destination. But we will use content experts to go and create those routes. So we don't need you to go, "Oh, I've got to go and design these routes." No. We're saying, we'll design the routes if you want, and you can just sort of check them and make sure that they kind of match what you want to do in destination. Of course, in a few years' time, when you're operating your own fleet of vehicles, you will want to be creating your own routes, of course. But right now, you're thinking, okay, how do I hedge? How do I mitigate the risk of these vehicles coming in and us not being part of that business? Well, you mitigate that by getting on board now and building routes, and then you're kind of covered. So we're not actually asking for anyone's time, although we're delighted if people want to lend us their time. What we're asking for is money. That's straightforward. That's how business works. And if people make the minimum commitment, which is about $600 a month, if people make the minimum commitment, that pays for 3 days, 2 to 3 days work by a content designer per month. So it's not even like having a full-time member of staff. It's a very, very part-time member of staff who, over the period of the next 12 months, will create you enough routes in your destination that you will be sort of protecting your business. And I think that's what we're about is doing that. So yeah. So is it a priority? Yeah, you've got 101 priorities. I get that, but you can just pay money if you want, and we'll take the majority of the work away from you. If you wanted to spend time doing the work, fantastic. But if you don't and you just want to pay money, then we can handle that too. I mean, the way that we look at it is you should be spending 5% of the money that you spend on vehicles, you should be spending on content. So if you go and buy a bus at $100,000, $200,000, you should be spending $10,000 on content. Why buy a bus for a couple $100,000 if you don't know where it's going to run? That's
true. That's very true.
So that's the fundamental point. Is it a priority? It is kind of a priority amongst other priorities, but we can make it a non-time commitment. That's the whole point. We can say, hey, just give us your money, and we'll solve the problem for you, and make sure that you're covered. That's what it's all about.
Oh, that's really great. Alex, this has been incredibly informative. Thank you so much for joining us. If anybody wants to reach out to you, find you on autoura.com/transition, download the transition plan.
And I'm pretty active on Twitter, Alex Bainbridge on Twitter.
Alex Bainbridge on Twitter. Go ahead and link that as well.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on. This has been incredible.
Great, Dustin. And you can invite me back in like 5 years' time, and you go, Dustin, and you go, Alex, remember when you said, and I'll go,
Next time we have you on the podcast, we will do it live from a self-driving car while we're on a tour.
I've been in a self-driving car the other day. It's very exciting. I think, if you want to go in a self-driving car, there are self-driving cars you can do in the USA today. So this is not even, if you go to Vegas, you go to Detroit, you can get in a self-driving car today.
Today. That's how soon this is coming. Alex, thank you so much.
Good. Thank you very much, Dustin. Cheers.
Have a good one. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.